I'm Megan Hamilton, and this is the Embracing Enchantment podcast. Today's guest was recommended to me by a friend who knew how much I struggle keeping my house organized. I've taken one of her Reiki group sessions, learned so much about crystals and simmer pots from her never-ending stream of helpful reels, and even talked about how everything is political in our DMs. I don't know if you remember that. She's been featured in Vice and NBC, and she has a book coming soon called Mundane Magic, A Lazy Witch's Guide to Hacking Your Brain, Building a Daily Practice, and Getting Shit Done. Welcome, Molly Donlan.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Wow, that was such a good intro.
Thanks. I'm so glad you're here. I have really learned a lot from you, and I really enjoy your content. I find it, I think we're aligned in a lot of ways, and I find it really uplifting and also just real. Like I can watch you, I'm wearing my hoodie today, and I was like, I think it's going to be okay to wear my hoodie.
My hair's a mess right now. I don't know if this is a video podcast, but I was like, well, this is who I am today. So
it is a video podcast, and
Great.
I think you look great. I think that's the thing about having pink hair, right? It's like, it doesn't matter. It's like glasses. It's
like a fashion accessory.
I'm a little bit zhuzhed up.
It's a mess, but I'm fun.
You're very fun. Really fun. So one of the things I do at the beginning of each episode is I pull a card for us to sort of set a vibe and just maybe think about intentions. And while I'm shuffling, can you tell us a little bit about your book and how it came to be?
Yeah. The book was born out of demand. About a year and a half ago, I posted my first Mundane Magic reel. It came to me in a dream. It was one of those moments where, when you have like an idea drop in and it won't leave you until you put it out into the world. It was one of those. And it was Mundane Magic for mopping your house. And I very distinctly remember like waking up from a dream saying like, are you tired of mopping like a muggle? And then just like going from there. And then people started asking for like, can you make the dishes? Doing the dishes a little more witchy. Make magic in doing your laundry. Make magic in decluttering. And this is really like how I live and breathe my magical practice as someone who's neurodivergent and way too busy and always is juggling 72 different projects and 52 different interests and also like forgetting to eat lunch. Like this is what I need to do to like fold my laundry and like mop my house. I need to make it like a magical potion, and I need to like make my meditation practice the washing the dishes so that I can, check 2 things off my to-do list or whatever. And so, I just started sharing it on Instagram, and people really loved it. And, I started putting out meditations that you can listen to while you're folding your laundry and doing your dishes and decluttering your house. And I've always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to publish a book. I never knew what it was going to be about. And it just seemed like a really easy, every time someone asked me a question, they're like, well, can you make shoveling snow more witchy? And I'm like, heck yeah. Like, and it just became this big, long list of ideas. And then when I got signed with my publisher, I've had my audience involved every step of the way. So each chapter of the book goes through different rooms in your home. So we have like the living room, the kitchen, the laundry. And then there's some like non-rooms, like your personal care tasks, like taking a shower, brushing your teeth, going to bed on time. Those types of things that, we know we need to do, we know we want to do, but maybe we need the motivation. We need a little magic in them. And so for every chapter, I made a post on Instagram and I said, okay, what are the things you avoid in this part of your house? What are the chores that you struggle with in this part of your house? And just that's how I generated the outline of the book. It's literally like every single idea that people wanted a magical spell for. I wrote down, and then that was the outline that I submitted to my editor. And that was eventually what became the manuscript. So it's very exciting. We're in the editing process now. So the pre-order is not out yet, but if you want to, get to know my mundane magic style, I do have some resources on my website that you can poke around and kind of get a feel for it before the book comes out.
That is so brilliant, to get people involved, to find out what people actually need, and then to create, like the structure based on what you absolutely know because your community has said to you, this is what I need. Talk about the magic of reciprocity, right? The like exchange that happens, which I think is, part of what the joy of magic in general is. I love that. And yes, we will definitely be sharing some links for Molly's all kinds of great offers in the show notes. Okay, and now, I have questions for you, and that actually just spawned about 10 others. I also have ADHD, so
oh, perfect.
This will be
two peas
really
in a
fun.
pod. I can't wait.
We're going to talk about 50,000 things in the next 50 minutes.
I can't wait.
Just saddle up. So in the meantime, I'm just going to pull a card for us and see what kind of focus we want to have. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So what do we need to know today? Oh, interesting. So Rider-Waite-Smith deck, once again, we have Judgment reversed.
Oh.
So, okay. Last year was the year of me sort of revamping how I looked at the Judgment card. So upright, it is, there's an angel who is blowing a horn, and people are rising from the dead. Now, there's all kinds of stuff to do with this card that you can do research on. The way that everybody's arms are placed is related to letters, and it goes back to the Hermetic Order of, or the Golden Order. Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Anyway, you can look all of that up, but essentially, I used to think of the Judgment card in terms of, judgment, judging. How do I judge myself? How do I hold myself back because of the judgment of others? And certainly that's something to consider. But one of the things, especially last year, and if, you've been listening for a little while, then you'll know that last year was, a personally challenging year. I was thinking about judgment in terms of rebirth, right? And so rising from the dead. So after the death happens, after we've released, after we've let go, after everything, falls apart or whatever, then there's this moment of rebirth. And so reinvention, coming out the other side of something. So we'll keep all of that in mind, and we'll think of it, what could we consider with the card showing up reversed? And so I'm going to ask this question, and this is something to ponder, and you can ponder it too, Molly, if you want to. What needs to be coming through in your shadow work? So when we're thinking of right now at this particular point in time, what old stuff needs to finally be put to rest, or at least grappled with, because nothing really ever goes away, I say. And what is ready to emerge as a fresh way of managing your psyche, your intuition, everything that sort of lives within your body that's sort of private, the shadow work. What could you do to revitalize, to rebirth yourself through your inner compass and your inner lens? Got anything to add to that?
No, that sounds great. I'm like, I feel like I should be taking notes.
We're recording this, don't worry.
Yeah, perfect.
You can go back.
I was like, I've never thought of judgment that way. I've never, it's so interesting because I love tarot, but I struggle to connect with the Rider-Waite deck. I always have. It's one of those where it's like, I tried really hard. Doesn't speak to me. I got my crystal tarot deck, and that one talks to me. So I'm like, I have no idea what any of these. letters, alphabets, cool. I'm going on a rabbit hole deep dive later.
I know. I think that's why I got the Rider-Waite-Smith deck for a gift like 27 years ago or something like that. So it's just the one that is home for me. But I mean, I know a lot of people don't relate to it. But there are definitely, pardon me, some pretty cool deep dives you can do into all of the symbolism in the cards. Yeah. And I feel like at this point, even though I've been doing it for so long, I'm like 50%, 60%. Like there's always something new to learn. And I love that about tarot. Yeah. Okay. So you've mentioned that you used to be skeptical of woo, and you actually come from a background as an advocate of sexual violence. So how did you get here?
And I want to make it clear. I was not an advocate for sexual violence. I was an advocate
Molly
for survivors.
Really wanted more sexual violence in the world, and somehow it didn't take off.
That was my life's work. I started doing that when I was 17. I did it for 9 years professionally. And I loved it. I, went to work all day, and then for fun, I would volunteer on the local domestic violence support line. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was watching Lifetime movies, and I was psychoanalyzing, like the different dynamics that happen between, survivors and abusers, and, reading books about domestic violence and consent and for fun, that was my life. That was my life's work. And, I have ADHD. So it was like a hyperfixation that never left. And I really, truly loved it. And I was really freaking good at it. And it nearly killed me. I very distinctly remember when I was 23, I had this hip pain that would not go away. And I went to a doctor, and they were like, I don't see this hip pain outside of my 80-year-old patients. And I was like, if you Googled hashtag health inspo, that was me. I was running half marathons and doing yoga every day and drinking a gallon of water and eating healthy meals for every meal. And I was doing all the things, and I had the orthopedic insoles in my shoes and the lumbar support in my car. And I still, no matter what I did, I just had this pain that would not go away. And so it eventually led me to just I had exhausted the medical field. I saw every medical doctor that specialized in pain in my area, from physical therapists to chiropractors to osteopathic medicine to literally everything, massage. I tried it all, and the pain just kept sticking around. And so when I found myself on a yoga retreat, I was talking to one of the teachers, and she was sharing a story about how she had a similar job to me, and she had pain in her neck, and Reiki was a tool that helped her release that. And she had this big emotional release, and then she could turn her head the next day. And I was like, you know what? I'm at this yoga retreat. I might as well try this, mumbo jumbo stuff. Why not? I'm here. And I remember being on the table and being like, oh, this is relaxing, I guess. I don't really know. And the practitioner had one hand on my knee and one hand on my ankle. And I remember my eyes were closed, and I saw, with my eyes closed, this wispy white light in the shape of my hip come forward, rotate, and then snap back into place. And I always compare it to when a cartoon character dies and their ghost comes up and for one more gag, and then they go back into their body and reanimate. That's what my hip did. And I remember just having this deep knowing of I need to understand this. There's something about this path. And, the next day I woke up in significantly less pain. A week later, I went to my chiropractor, and I was like, I don't know. And he was like, I don't know either, but your hips are in alignment for the first time ever. So whatever you did, keep doing that. And wow, it eventually led me to a Reiki training that, was an interesting experience. Did not help my skepticism, because I loved her to pieces, but she was way up in the clouds. So I was the annoying kid on the car ride. How does it work? How does that work? What do you mean? What is that? What's that? And so eventually I had to kind of dive down my own rabbit holes and look through the science and find teachers that understood the science and could really ground me in what I already understood as a skeptic, so that I could get out of my own way and actually experience the benefits of the practice. And what I found was that, through understanding the impact of the energy body, I was actually taking on a lot of the stories that I was hearing from my clients when I was in that advocacy role. And I actually did not see the world as a safe place and didn't realize it because it was so embedded in my consciousness. It was to the point where I remember going on a date with someone in the mall and walking by a really crowded Build-A-Bear, and they were like, I bet you're thinking what I'm thinking. And in my head, I'm doing statistics on like how many kids are in there and how many of them will experience abuse in their lifetime and how many of them will tell and how many of their abusers will be held accountable. And I was like, yeah, we're definitely thinking the same thing. And they turned to me and they're like, new Pokemon Build-A-Bears. That's why it's so crowded. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. But that was just my normal. That's how I saw the world. And because of that, my system didn't feel safe, and it was storing all of this pain. And so that's the, in a nutshell, how I ended up here and why I teach, through the lens of this blend of science and spirituality, because there is so much like just incredible research out there now, and there's so many like parallels that we can draw, and it's just like I just geek out about it. I love it. So
yeah, well, I mean, and what a sort of I want to say life-changing experience that was, because like what a vision to have in the middle of the whole thing, and for your brain to sort of recognize and translate back to you, like, this is what we're doing. You like it's pretty incredible. And so then you started practicing Reiki, I'm assuming, because you have, you teach Reiki, right? And weren't you just running a certification program?
Yeah. I run it twice a year. I call it Reiki 1, the science of self-healing. And it very much is like a neurodivergent friendly, science-based Reiki training, really designed for like the training I wish I could have found when I was kind of in that midst of trying to figure it all out. So I run that training a couple of times a year. I juggle many hats. I like to say, I'm the ADHD. It's like any rabbit hole, I just fall down. But yeah, I actually started as a yoga instructor and meditation guide, and then added on Reiki to that, added on the crystal healing, and sort of snowballed into what it's become today.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so for somebody who is like, okay, I've heard the word Reiki a ton of times. Can you tell us what the sort of definition of Reiki is, I guess? And then maybe your version of it.
Yeah. So I like to say that the way that I describe Reiki is it's an energy healing practice, helps support your stress relief, helps with relaxation, assists with healing. I tend to geek out about the nervous system when I talk about it, because when I was an advocate, that was the number one thing I talked to survivors about, was the trauma response in the nervous system. And so that was kind of the bridge for me to understanding this world. And so essentially, if you're unfamiliar with your nervous system, you have two sides to it. You have your sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight, flight, freeze response. That's kind of like your survival response. And then your parasympathetic nervous system. That's your rest, restore, and heal response. Your brain is so cute because it just wants to keep you alive. That's why it does all the things that it does. It just wants to keep you alive, but it doesn't really know the difference between a tiger chasing you and like your Wi-Fi buffering for just a little bit too long before an important meeting. Stress is stress is stress. And so that sympathetic nervous system gets activated whenever your brain feels like there's a tiger chasing you, right? So any kind of stress is going to trigger that. And when we're in the sympathetic nervous system, all of your resources goes towards keeping you alive. So your concentration, your memory, your focus are impaired. Your pain receptors are affected, so you feel more tension, inflammation, pain in the body. Your digestion, all of those resources that go towards digesting your food get diverted. So you actually can't break down food as well. Your mouth creates less saliva, a whole sort of things, right? The heart starts to race, the breath gets shallow to prepare you to run. Different muscles get triggered. It's this whole system, and it's designed to keep you alive, and we need it. It's the reason why you're not eating Tide Pods for lunch and walking in front of trains, right?
I don't know if some people actually do those things, but yes.
But it's also the reason why we're motivated to chase our goals, right? Like, so we need this. It was designed for short-term activation. Literally, there's a tiger. I'm either going to fight it, I'm going to run away, or I'm going to play dead and hope it moves on to fresher prey. And then once we're in that safety zone again, we can go back into the parasympathetic, where all of those resources that were diverted towards keeping you alive can now go towards finding equilibrium and healing in the body. Your body's really good at healing itself. It's why most of us don't need stitches for a paper cut. But you cannot heal when you are running from a tiger. So most of us live in the sympathetic nervous system, and that can lead to chronic issues like high blood pressure, IBS. There's this huge link between chronic stress and IBS and other digestive issues. It can lead to chronic pain. And so what I like to explain to people is that the reason why Reiki helps with healing isn't because it's this woo magic thing. It's because it helps you shift out of that sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system, shifting from that tiger's chasing me response to I'm actually okay right now. I can divert these resources back towards my natural healing abilities in my body. And over time, we can actually build more resilience in the nervous system. So every little thing doesn't become a tiger.
Okay. I love that. And you're speaking my language. I don't know what you know about me, but I'm a speaking coach in my job. And so
lots of tigers there. Public speaking, one of the biggest tigers.
We talk about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system all the time. I love it. And it's actually a great segue into the next question I have for you. But before we get there, how does Reiki work? Because my understanding is that you're tapping into, I've heard it said in so many different ways, and I've had Reiki done, and I've done Reiki with you through a different workshop, but it is essentially, isn't it like tapping into love and allowing that like through your hands to help somebody else's either stuck energy or like healing energy. Can you speak a little bit more to that? Like what's the how of it?
Yeah. So I like to say when I'm practicing Reiki, I'm just a watering can. And so the idea is there's a universal energy around us, all within us, all around us, within everything. And as a Reiki practitioner, it's a collecting of that, allowing it to flow through and out the hands. So I'm not actually the one doing the healing. I'm just holding the space. I'm just the watering can. But in order to understand how that works, we have to talk about kind of like frequency and physics and all that fun stuff. So essentially what we know about our everything is that we're all made up of these tiny little particles that are all vibrating at different frequencies. So you, me, this microphone, this table, what we perceive to be solid in our world is actually just more densely compacted particles that our brain fills in the gap of. And so all of these particles are always playing off each other. They're in relationship to each other. And they all have a different speed at which they're moving. And so if you think about if you've ever walked into a room where someone just had an argument and you can feel it, even though nobody's saying anything, that's you being affected by those vibrations, that frequency, the particles within that space. Similarly, if you've ever been around someone who's really excited and you feel yourself lift, right? That's those particles starting to speed up to vibrate faster. And so if we turn this to the body, right? Think about when you're feeling really slow, like blah, right? You're in that room with that argument. everything, those particles slow down, and your cells are made up of those particles too. So everything in your body slows down. So now you feel sluggish, you feel heavy, maybe you've achy, can't really focus as well. Versus when you're around that excited person and you start to lift and everything moves faster, all of those cells and all of their functions move more effectively. So the idea of what we're doing with Reiki is it's almost like a collection, an intentional collection of those fast moving particles, that high frequency, that fast vibration, drawing it in like a watering can and allowing it to flow out the hands to the other person. So then their particles interact with those particles and start to lift, just like when we're around that person who's excited.
What a beautiful and fabulous way of explaining it. Thank you. I love that. I really love that so much. And I love the idea of just being the vessel through which, through which it's all happening. And, yeah, thank you for that. So, speaking again of the, parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems, as a visibility coach, I'm often curious about how people handle having large followings. So Molly's got nearly 200,000 followers on Instagram. How do you stay on top of the responsibility of such a large following? And what are some of your practices to stay grounded? Ooh. And that's assuming that it activates you. Like maybe it doesn't.
It definitely used to more. I actually have almost 1 million on TikTok. That happened very suddenly. Like within a month, I went from like 1,000 to like 500,000, and it was just bonkers.
Really?
Yeah. It was nuts. 2021.
Yeah, that would be really activating.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was super activating. And what's difficult about it is it's such a dopamine high when you go viral, right? Whatever viral means, it means different things to different people based on where they're at. But any kind of virality, there's such a high of it, and it's not sustainable. So it always peters off. And so what ends up happening, or what happened to me, is I felt like a one-hit wonder for a little while. And I had this fear around it. And so I started creating from that place of fear, trying to reach that high again. And so I look back on my content from like 2021 and I'm like, who is that? Who is that girl? And I remember being like, I feel like a textbook. I feel like nobody knows me. I don't like what I'm teaching. I'm not seeing it translate into my actual training, which is what I love, and all of that. And so, about 1.5 years ago, I said, screw it. I'm not teaching to an algorithm anymore. I don't care about the virality. I don't care about the numbers. I just want to make content that feels fun to create and feels like me. And because of that, I feel like that almost created like a shield around me. So it's like when people come in and they're like, oh, this is dumb, or whatever they say. Like literally, I had a comment the other day. Someone was like, are you 12? And I was like, what a compliment. I was like, are you asking for my skincare regimen? Right? Like, but it feels like a deflection because it is so me. And it's so inherently me that like, I've always been the person that, as long as I'm authentic to myself, if you don't like that, that's great. I love that for you, because I don't want you here if you don't like me. And so as long as I'm authentic to myself, and as long as I stay true to my values and I voice those values. So really over the last couple of years, I've just been like unashamed of my values. Like I'm someone who like, I wore a t-shirt on a YouTube video that says reproductive rights are human rights. And I had a bunch of people that were like, the wrong side of the internet found that video. And I was like, great. Fun. Those are all the people who are going to unfollow me. And now my community is so much safer because of it for the people who are meant to be here. And so I that's kind of one of my practices, is to just be like unashamed of showing me, and in doing that, like giving other people permission to show themselves or be themselves or whatever. And so, yeah, that's one of my practices. And then I also, like on the witchy side, if I get a lot of hate comments, I will do a transmutation spell. So anytime someone leaves a hate comment for me, it translates into abundance. And so it'll translate into like a video going viral on the right side of the app or whatever, which is currently happening. So I'm like, yeah, bring on the hate. Bring it on. Let's go.
Yeah.
Weed yourself out.
I feel like I saw you put something in the freezer recently.
Yeah.
Was that what this was all about? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 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 That video reached 1.7 million and growing. So I'm like, bring on the haters. That's just proof it's working.
My friend and client Danielle has a large YouTube following, and her content, she does a lot of, or she got famous for what I eat in a day. And she's a fat activist, and she would get like so many awful, hateful comments. And she's like, that's fine. I make money every time you leave me a comment. Every time you watch, she's like, I bought my computer because you hate me. So
yeah. And honestly, I see, like, I was actually talking to a company I was meeting with recently, and they were like, we noticed that every time you get a hate comment, you respond like so with such gentleness. How do you do that? And for me, it's like, I am a big believer in like walking my walk. And so in the Reiki practice, we have these principles that we kind of guide us down the path of Reiki. And one of them is just for today, I will not anger. And I always teach my students is just for this breath, I will not anger. Just for this hate comment, I will not anger. And so I honestly, I sometimes I love the hate comments because it gives me this opportunity to show these practices in the real world. It's like, if I can show you, if you can scroll through my comments and see that, like, this is how I apply Reiki to like someone telling me that I look like trash and I'm an idiot and I can't believe they let these people vote, if I can meet that with compassion and also strong boundaries, then it's almost like I see myself as a teacher in that moment, where it's like, okay, maybe that gives you some spark of inspiration for how you can apply it to your life in a different way.
Yes, I love that. Show through your actions, right? Teach by being. So furthering on that, do you not ever get angry?
Oh no, I absolutely get angry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I fully get angry. And that's like one of the things that grinds my gears about some Reiki, some understanding of the practice is people think just for today I will not anger means I never anger. I will never anger. Yeah. But that's not what it's saying. It's saying just for today, as in I have no control over tomorrow and I have no control over yesterday. Just for today. And it doesn't even mean I will never anger. It's that in this moment, I'm making a choice. I'm asking myself, is this anger productive or not? And choosing my response based on that versus letting my anger run the show. It's that difference between reaction and response. It's giving myself that breath to say, sometimes I say, just for this breath, I'm really pissed off and I will anger. Yeah. And I will write that email. And then I'm going to take a breath before I send it. And I'm going to let that anger go and I'm going to reread it. Right? Yeah. Like, rather than holding onto it, because anger is just a tiger to your nervous system. So yes, we need to feel it. Yes, we need to process it. And we don't need to carry it with us.
Yeah. And I think, with emotional response, what can be so helpful is if you allow it to process in the moment, whether it's crying, whether it's anger, whatever emotion is coming up, quote unquote, negative emotion, we'll just say, right? Because emotions are just emotions. They're all responses. They give you information. Yep. It passes through and then it's done. Yeah. It's usually, if you let yourself cry in the moment, it's probably going to be 10 seconds, if that, right? But if you don't, And sometimes we can't, right? And that there's a reason why, there's all kinds of reasons why it's not appropriate to cry in a particular moment. Or in fact, it might like take away from your power or whatever you need to get done in the moment.
Yeah.
Or especially
just
be angry.
Doesn't feel safe. Yeah.
Yep. And so allowing, if you're able to, allow it to process, allow it to move through, great. If not, make sure you make time to access it later so it can do whatever it needs to do. But having the emotional flexibility and the ability to make those decisions in the moment, to be able to practice it, I think, especially, let's be real, right now, freaking out and getting angry and like losing your marbles in social media or in response to people, that's not helping us actually figure out how to work together and be together, even when we, disagree, even when there's, whatever is going on. And using those opportunities, as you say, like you appreciate it when somebody gives you the chance to practice in real time the principles of Reiki that are really important to you. And I'm going to choose right now not to be angry. When you can almost sort of flip the switch on, instead of saying, oh, I have to do this again. Instead, you could say, this is a great opportunity in real time to practice the principles through which I want to live my life. Love that. I love that. And that's a transmutation as well, right?
Totally. Yeah. I used to tell people all the time, like when I worked with survivors, like sometimes they would get mad at me because they just had nowhere else to express their anger. They just had nowhere else that felt safe. And I'd always tell them I'm a safe person to get mad at. Like people who leave hate comments, I've never received a hate comment from someone I wanted to trade places with.
Yeah.
And so maybe there's nowhere else they can express that hate. Does that make it, okay? No. But that just means I'm not going to fuel their fire anymore. Right.
And it takes away any responsibility you might feel for having created something that actually activates them. Because it really is their own junk that they're going to have to deal with at some point. Yeah, I like that a lot. So there's obviously been an uptick in people's interests in witches and different modalities of spirituality and magic. Why do you think this is? And why do you think it's important?
Oh boy. I think part of it, honestly, like I give some credit to TikTok. Totally. That app has issues. So I'm not saying it's like a perfect app, but I think it made this type of content accessible for people in a way that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
And certainly through like the pandemic where we were all inside, we felt really powerless, many of us. We were spending a lot more time scrolling, trying new hobbies, learning new things. I think all of that combined created this like catalyst for, people to start to open up about their spirituality and witchcraft and Reiki and all the things. I think it's important now because, I always kind of see it as like a form of resistance in a way, right? Like, we could go deep into like the history of Reiki is like rooted in prejudice against Japanese culture and like came over to the US during World War II when there was literally like Japanese internment camps. And so I really see a lot of the skepticism around Reiki. Like if we look back and we follow those threads back, we can find that root in that injustice that was experienced and continues to be experienced, really. And so when we look around like kind of like witchcraft, we have those same ties, right? The Salem witch trials, everyone has heard of those. And so I think there's this innate resistance in us taking back our power. And I also think the thing that I love about spirituality is there's this piece of empowerment. Like I always tell my students, you are the magic. You you. When I'm doing Reiki for someone, I'm just a watering can. You're doing the healing, right? Like you're the one who's accepting this energy, right? And so there's this like exchange of power from looking outside ourselves for the answer, looking outside ourselves for the power, and instead turning inward and starting to tune into our own inner wisdom and starting to check in and say like, ooh, like that actually doesn't align with me. What's that about? And questioning that rather than just kind of like going. I also like, I'm a big believer that like capitalism and the patriarchy wants us to be in our sympathetic nervous system because it's easier to control us in that place.
100%.
And so just the act of like creating space in our day that we can shift out of that survival mode is an act of resistance, right? Like we were not designed to produce constantly. And in fact, the news cycles and the political cycles right now are banking on our freeze response. Like they are hoping that we get stuck in our sympathetic nervous system because then we won't take action. And so there is so much power to just taking that power back, that control back, and moving it into our parasympathetic and allowing ourselves to rest and allowing ourselves to get off the hamster wheel of production and allowing us to sustain the resistance efforts that we feel called to do long term rather than burning hot and fast and burning out.
Yep. I got nothing I could add to that because I'm 100% with you. And I know for me, a lot of it was feeling like I have some control over, or I have some choices, or I have some consent over what I allow in and what doesn't work for me. And so what I've always enjoyed about witchcraft and the different modalities of spirituality is the sort of inherent consent, the inherent ability to make it your own, right? The and certainly I'm not talking about closed practices, cultural practices that are not mine or yours, or like they belong to certain groups of folks for a reason. But in terms of what's out there and what we can say, oh yeah, this really worked for me, I really loved this piece, and just sort of allowing the practice, whatever it is, to recalibrate, to bring us back to ourselves, to be present in the moment, and not, as you say, on the hamster wheel, or not the like production, or constantly like hustling for money, or like some kind of like, I think what there's a big awakening of, especially right now, is wait a minute. Do I actually want all this stuff that I thought I wanted? Like, what is it making me happy? Like, what I'm just like constantly like, oh, I got to make more money. Oh, I've got to do this. I've got, like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I don't think I do. And what happens if, I'm encultured into this sort of way of being, and I allow myself to divest from that and say, I don't need to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in order to, make a living, or like provide a fun life for my family. I don't need to have the latest iPhone, like whatever the case is. What have we just decided, or what were we brought up with? And how can we also just be like, I would actually enjoy, this is my famous example, but like, what if I want to spend 3 hours in the backyard looking for 4-leaf clovers and checking in on the birds?
Oh, I love that.
I love it too.
Yeah.
And it makes me a better person.
Yeah.
And it also like brings me back to this, the principles of animism. And a recent guest, Carmen Spaniola, was talking about this. It's when we agree that everything is ensouled, right? Everything has a soul. Then there's the reciprocity of it. And so how can we be in relationship with each other like humans, but as everything around us, instead of extracting, right? Which is the principles of capitalism. How can I make the most out of you? How can I how can I take these flowers and make money from them so I can what?
Yeah, capitalize my hobbies.
Get a Nintendo Switch. I don't know.
I saw this, and it's so interesting that you say that, because I'm thinking about like my own journey over the last year. I used to only read self-help books and like books related to my work. Like I said, I only watched Lifetime movies back when I was an advocate. And over the last year, I picked up fiction for the first time ever.
I've noticed that. Yeah.
I'm reading fairy smut. I just finished a hockey romance that I was like, this is the greatest. Like I was like, it was a fake dating one bed trope. And I was like, I'm so into it. But I truly like, last year was one of the most expansive magical years of my life. And also I only read like 2 self-help books. And they were not related to my work. Like one of them was about like Edgar Allan Poe or something. Like it was like wild.
A self-help book about Edgar Allan Poe?
Yeah, it was more like a nonfiction. I guess I categorize all self-help as nonfiction and all nonfiction as self-help. Whatever. I read like 100 fiction books and had an amazing year. Like my anxiety is lower, my screen time is lower. I have deeper connections with people. Like I got on an airplane a couple weeks ago and someone was reading Kingdom of Ash and I was like, is this your first time reading that series? And we had like a conversation the entire flight. Like we were just like yapping about books. And I was like, have you read this one? No. Have you read this one? And I'm like writing a list down, you know? But like, yeah, those are connections I've never made before, you know? And I think it has so much to do with like no longer seeing this hobby as reading as like has to be productive. It's like it can be fun, it can be cute, it can be just like silly, goofy, you know.
It doesn't have to be anything. It can just because I want to.
Just because
I
want
to. It feels nice to do it. Yeah.
I don't know what happens to the hockey bros, you know.
I want to as well. Maybe we will be putting this book in the show notes too, so we can all enjoy the hockey bros and the lessons from that. Okay. So, because we are in uncharted waters and collectively have been in trauma really for the last 5 years, though many, many groups and cultures have been living with ongoing trauma for centuries. What would you say are the most important things to keep in mind right now?
Woof.
I'm just really asking you some
big question.
Light lobs today. So
just some softballs.
Should be easy to just pull it out.
No, I think what I was just saying around like when we are in uncharted waters and unprecedented times, and especially right now, where it seems like there's a new headline every hour that is upsetting.
Oh yeah, like every 5 minutes if you want to take it in.
Yeah. Those. The oppressors, honestly, like they feed off of our freeze response. And I just want to geek out about the freeze response for a moment because nobody talks about it. Everyone just says fight or flight. And I'm like, freeze. That's such a big one.
Yes.
If we want the fancy term, it's tonic immobility. but it's honestly, it's so back in the day when we were chased by saber-toothed tigers, tiger comes at us. First reaction is, can I fight this tiger? Will I survive? No. Okay. Can I get away? Will I survive? No. Okay. If I play dead, then the tiger will sniff around for fresher prey because the tiger also has a survival response and the tiger doesn't want to get sick eating me. So if I just freeze for long enough, the tiger will move on. And so a lot of us, we're never taught that. We're just taught fight, flight. And, you know, this goes back to my roots as an advocate where, you know, a lot of people, when they experience the freeze response in any kind of trauma, there's so much shame around it. Why didn't I do more? Why didn't I stay up? Well, I should have done this. I could have done that. Why can't I get out of bed? Why can't I, you know, fold my laundry? Because there's a freaking war going on across the world. Like, because people's rights are being taken away every goddamn day. Like, your laundry is not that important to your cute little brain. Cute little brain is scared to death. And so that freeze response prevents us from taking action. And we need it. It's a survival response. And that's what the oppressors bank on. Because when you're in the freeze response, they can keep on going. They can keep doing, they can keep pushing. And the more they push, the more you freeze. And again, the freeze is not your fault, not your fault. But awareness of it is really powerful. Because when I'm in the freeze response, I can either divert my energy towards shame for myself around like, why am I not doing more? Or I can say, okay, this is a tiger to my brain. Right now, I can't do anything because all of my resources are going towards survival. So how can I bring myself an ounce of safety right now? Is it a deep breath? Is it turning the news off? Is it putting my phone on Do Not Disturb? Is it reading a hockey romance? Is it going for a walk?
I think
Is it drinking a glass of water? Right? A big one I used to teach people all the time is if you feel that freeze response, go into the bathroom and turn the water on super cold and run your wrists underneath it. And that can shock your nervous system out of that freeze response. The same thing as splashing water on your face, just like, a little bit easier to do in public.
Right.
But like finding that compassion for your freeze response can actually help you unlock it rather than staying in the shame response, which then becomes another tiger, which then activates the freeze response further. So I think, there's, and at the same time, we have this messaging at the same time that like, you should be doing more. You should be calling all of your politicians right now. Call them all right now simultaneously. Get a new phone and get a bunch of them, right? And for someone who's in the freeze response, they're like, I should be doing more. How could I possibly take a walk right now?
Yeah.
How could I possibly take a walk right now?
I am
But we
responsible
need it
for all of this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But you need to be responsible for your nervous system first.
Yes.
Because your nervous system is going to be the difference between you actually being able to take action and you just like spiraling in shame that you don't need to hold.
Yep. Yes. I love it so much. And I used to say that I was trying to do some research as to when somebody first started talking about freeze response, because I was starting to get the sense, because freeze seemed to me to be something that was mostly a response for women and non-binary folks.
Oh, interesting.
And I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be interesting if that was never studied when we were studying nervous system responses? Because we never do studies on women because of hormones. And then I was, it would occur to me like, okay, well, when we think about what our bodies do, like fight or flight, are action. And so when we're thinking about going back to even your early days of advocating for sexual assault survivors, and they're like, why don't you do anything? Why don't you get up and run away? It's like, I literally couldn't. But we don't talk about freeze response. So for me, it sort of became like, a feminist issue.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, so we, as much as knowing what it is and knowing what works for us to be able to compassionately and gently get out of that so that we can get back to a place of, homeostasis or whatever you want to say, and then be able to take action again. That's the way forward, right? It's like you're going to get activated. You're going to be put on the spot. Somebody is going to yell at you and you're going to have a response to that or whatever the case. And then how do you get out of that? Or, as you were saying earlier, how can I use this as an opportunity to practice my response flexibility in real time? Because we can say to ourselves as many times as we want, this is what I'm going to do when this happens.
Oh, yeah. In the moment, you never know what you're going to do. You don't have the choice.
You don't. And a great example I have of this, and there's a bit of a trigger warning here. And are you okay if I say something upsetting?
Yeah.
Okay. Some of you who know me and have been following know the story, but I was attacked. My best friend and I were attacked by a man with a hammer last June. Yeah. And I was amazed at how my brain, I literally kept hearing the words, this isn't happening. And I was frozen, and I knew I was frozen. I knew I was in freeze. And my brain was like, it's not happening. This isn't happening. And I was like, I know this isn't true. What is going on right now? Like, and this is, I'm somebody who has studied this, who has practiced it for over 10 years, practiced it with clients. And it was fascinating to me. And then, you know, after the fact, when I was asked to ID this person who had been in my face, I could not.
Yeah. Yeah. When we experience trauma, our memories impacted. Like
Everything's impacted.
I always think about, have you seen that meme of SpongeBob where he's like sorting through the archives of his brain and everything is on fire?
No.
Well, there's an episode where he's like, it's like a metaphor for the brain, but he's like looking through all these files to try to find the memory, and then like he can't find it, and everything short circuits, it all goes up in flames. That's what happens when our brain tries to store traumatic memories, is it literally gets corrupted. It's like a corrupted file on your computer, and so we can't access it. And then we have that shame because people don't understand that is literally a survival mechanism for your brain. That's something so upsetting that your brain doesn't allow you to access it to continue your survival, right? To continue that that sense of survival, at least. And then we have that shame built into it. And then we're like, well, he was right in my face. Why can't I remember him? Like, or, you know, I thought the shirt was blue and it was orange, and now everyone thinks I'm a liar and whatever. Yeah. It's so wild. And that's one of the reasons why I love to geek out about the nervous system, because oftentimes like it just helps eliminate so much of that self-imposed shame, or sometimes like socially imposed shame. Because once you understand that it's literally like a function of your brain that you have no control over, then we can have so much more compassion for ourselves and our reactions. And when we have that compassion, we build resilience, and then we start to feel more in control of those reactions.
And we are, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And we also then extend that compassion to the people around us, because we start to understand more. Oh, that wasn't about me. That was literally, you couldn't do that. It's also what I love about your work in general, in terms of, you say a lazy witch's guide. I don't believe in the word lazy, and you probably don't either.
Yeah.
It is, hi, this is your ADHD brain. So we're going to hack it so that we can do this stuff that, makes us feel like we're not good people. There's some kind of moral like issue with the fact that I just have these stupid pool noodles in my front hall that have been there since last summer, but I just cannot. Yeah,
relatable.
Like I do laundry, I do things, but like the frickin' pool noodles are still there, and so be it. And also how freeing to be like, yeah, they are. Okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
I love it. It's divesting from the shame. It's so important for just like living, a wonderful life. Okay. So knowing that, I've taken up lots of your time, but I like to leave things sort of hopeful.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, what would you recommend putting in a simmer pot to keep us strengthened and hopeful? Because Molly is the queen of simmer pots. She has a recipe for any simmer pot you might possibly need, and you got to go check out her reels for that.
Yeah, people love the simmer pots. It's so funny because it's always been something that I love to do, because a lot of like fragrances make my nose itchy. So I'm like, you just make it witchy, and now my whole space smells better. Okay, hopeful. Orange is the first thing that comes through. Orange is so powerful for connecting with joy and energizing, and keeping that, like, I almost see like orange is sort of like the avenue out of the freeze response in my brain. Like when we feel like hopeless, it's kind of like the sun peeking through the clouds is sort of like the energy of orange for me. So it's definitely got to be full of orange. And then what I'm feeling to add to that is, and this is how I come up with my simmer pots. People always ask me, it's like a channeled experience. I'm like, I don't know, pull it in.
Love it.
What I'm feeling with the orange is jasmine to help bring ease to like the body, the nervous system, the frets that are going through the mind. I kind of like the vision that's coming through is that big mouth Billy Bass. Don't worry, be happy, you know? So jasmine, we got to put some jasmine in there. This is welcome to the inner workings of my brain.
We need to get a big mouth Billy Bass for the kitchen.
There's going to be some people listening to this that are like, I don't get that reference.
It's true.
It's a relic.
You are probably very young.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Orange jasmine. I'm going to throw some cinnamon in there. Cinnamon's really good for luck, for kind of like things turning out the way we want them to. And also I think it's a really nice grounding spice to add in with some of those like uplifting kind of jasmine, orange, like sort of tether us into the earth a little bit. And then we're going to throw in some salt for protection. Salt for protection.
Love it.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that you brought jasmine into that. It is, it's not something I would have thought of. And now I'm like, okay, yeah, I have jasmine. I'm going to go make a simmer pot.
Yeah. I love jasmine in a simmer pot. It's just it's so pretty too. Like the white flowers with the orange and yeah.
Yeah. Listen, Molly, I've so enjoyed having you here today. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing like lots of remedies with us and just sharing your wisdom. And we don't know yet when the pre-order is, right?
Don't know yet.
No. Okay. But we know
TBD.
that when we see it, the best thing we could do is get on it immediately and get that pre-order in, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In the meantime, if you want to enter my world and practice shifting out of that sympathetic nervous system response with me, I do have a free 7-day meditation challenge. I say it's for the easily distracted, for those who think they hate meditation, who can't sit still, whose brains won't shut the hell up. This is the challenge for you. Okay. So if you think you hate meditating, give me 7 days to change your mind. And yeah, so we'll leave the link to that to the show notes, or you can come say hi to me over on Instagram.
Thank you. And yeah, we will definitely have probably at this point, a big list, including, Amazon links to, Billy the Bass and, so please subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to leave a review. You can also leave a voice note. I love getting those voice notes at embracingenchantment.com, and we might feature it in a future episode. You can find out more about Molly, all the things, and where to follow her in the show notes, and make sure you're following her on Instagram, because honestly, you get so much great stuff coming at you all the time. You're going to want to make sure you're subscribed, because we have some exciting episodes coming up about mediumship and ancestral work, and you can catch up on previous episodes where we talk about collapse, tarot, human design, the question of whether magic is real, astrology. If you haven't heard that first episode with Colin Bedell, I highly, highly recommend it. And so much more. Until then, here's to building an enchanted life. Thank you so much, Molly.
Thank you.